Earlier this year, the Thai Parliament hosted a seminar in Bangkok, focusing on fostering sustainable peace and regional security in the context of Myanmar's escalating crisis. This event brought together key stakeholders, including Asean Parliamentarians, civil society representatives, and international experts, to discuss a unified, rights-based response to Myanmar's turmoil, emphasizing the urgent need for regional coordination and the political isolation of the military junta. Insight Myanmar podcast had the privilege of speaking with several speakers, guests, and attendees of the event, and we've compiled their insights into a series. We hope that these episodes will offer our listeners a closer look at the diverse perspectives and responses shaping the regional and international approach to Myanmar's crisis.
My name is Santiago. I'm an economist by training. What do I do? I'm an activist. Well, actually, I was a three-term member of parliament. And before that, I was an activist working on trade policies, largely on bilateral agreements and multilateral agreements, including the WTO. And at this time, I do some work on forced labor and climate, and now I do a special research on data centers.
Right.
And besides Myanmar.
Right.
Besides human rights.
Besides Myanmar and besides
human rights in Southeast Asia. I do quite a bit, actually.
So besides Myanmar is a big disclaimer to just put off there on the side. So can you flesh out and unpack a little more on related to Myanmar, what work and involvement you've had?
For a very long time, I worked on issues of human rights, minority rights, discrimination issues, and I tried to put forward an alternative economic development for minority communities in Malaysia, but also looking at how trade policies can help developing countries. I think one of the problems that we have today in the world is this lopsided, unequal relationship between superpowers and developing countries, and it is rigged to the point that developing countries will not be able to come out of its poverty or even its lack of technology and upward mobility. And today, if you find that a large chunk of people earn low wages and prices going up, it's not something that is shocking. It is happening by design. It's happening by design. This is how it was. When you embrace a free market, these are the things that you have to expect. And I think that has got major impact on democracy, the quality of democracy, as well as the future of democracy itself. Because people are poor, they want a strong leader. And sometimes the strong leader or the strongman leader is a dictator. So it actually works against their own interests. So today in many parts of the world, including Southeast Asia, you have very strongman leaders, and they are chosen by the lower middle classes, as well as the working class. And they think that this strong person can actually lead them out of poverty. And I think this is a product of the democratic system that we have had over the last so many years.
So that's your analysis of some of the problems and challenges with the way these things are set up and some of the unfair inequalities built into it. What can be done about that? What have you tried to do and what do you advocate doing?
I think some of the things that we have to look at are alternatives and different narratives. I think alternatives and narratives are part and parcel of the problem itself. And how you understand the problem will lead to a more sustainable form of alternatives and narratives. So that's why I think in Southeast Asia, this is a big challenge. If you had asked me the same question about quality of democracy in the region, say 5 years ago, I would have said, come to Southeast Asia. You will learn how to develop a democracy. Though. You will learn about federal democracies. You will learn about human rights, because that's what the governments were doing. But fast forward 6, 7 years, my God, things have changed radically opposed to the last 5 years, when Democrats have become dictators. And where people have become much more poorer. And if you look at the wealth spread in the region, is the rich are getting richer in all the countries. There are more billionaires now in Southeast Asia compared to many years ago, and poor are getting more poorer. And this puts stress at different levels to different communities in different countries. And what kind of social policies are there? What kind of social protection is made available for local people, as well as migrants who are now moving from one country to the other? You have documented migrants and you have undocumented migrants. And at least documented migrants, they are protected some sort. But undocumented migrants are not protected at all. So they are at the mercy of employers, they're at the mercy of nations that receive them or where they find themselves. So I think it poses challenges and problems that are not, where the solutions are not easy.
Yeah.
They're quite difficult though. I mean, the case in point is Myanmar. Myanmar is a country that has got a checkered past, massive checkered past. 70 years of animosity, 70 years of fighting with each other, within each other, and so on and so forth. But I can see, compared to the many years ago, there is more cohesion now among the alternative forces, among the people who want change. Before, the big villain, if I can use that expression, was the army. They actually, happily, divide and rule. But now that divide and rule has reduced very much. And now you have some kind of a unity that's being developed, which I think that Myanmar has not seen for many decades. We were in Chiang Mai a couple of weeks ago, and we heard some very positive developments in terms of bottom-up federalism, and that you have now an agreement. It's called AFTA, AFTA, where all the big ethnic communities and states have signed on to an AFTA, signed on to an agreement on how a future Myanmar should be looking like. This is unprecedented. This is unprecedented, and therefore, in some sense, you have to celebrate this, because you don't have that many years ago. But I think what is really important for us now is to make that something as a showcase. And ASEAN governments have to speak about that. ASEAN governments have to acknowledge that things are changing on the ground in Myanmar. Yes, the fightings are happening, the killings are going on, the refugee numbers are increasing. Yes, all of that is happening. The camp centers are a product of what is going on. But the reason is because of the internal fighting, internal squabbles and fighting. Well, I shouldn't say squabble, though. It's not really a squabble. The internal fighting and crisis in Myanmar itself. But you can see some new developments that are happening. And that new development, whether it's bottom-up federalism, whether it is now thinking through a new kind of democracy, and the participation of women in the struggle is phenomenal. Is phenomenal. So this has to be celebrated, and this is something that is very good and very important, and it should be brought as part of our understanding of where Myanmar should be going in the context of ASEAN. I think this is something that we have to do. In my view, I think ASEAN needs to learn quite a bit about not to be process-driven, but to be solution-driven. I think this process driven has taken ASEAN 4 years, and now we are now in the 5th year. And if I was ASEAN, no, if I can use that, I think we learned something from Indonesia, though. Indonesia did something like 164 dialogue sessions. They met everybody. They met every possible group on Myanmar. Now, before I say that, let me just preface this by saying, in 2023, Asean Parliamentarians for Human Rights did an international parliamentary inquiry on Myanmar. And the purpose of that report essentially is to look at the role of the international community or the global community on Myanmar. And it was found clearly that one of the missing links in terms of helping Myanmar come out of the crisis it is in, or the quagmire it is in, is because lack of international support, international attention on Myanmar. And therefore we recommended, one, that the international community accepts NUG as an alternative government. Accept them as an alternative government, and together with that, provide diplomatic support. It means open up, embassies if possible. There are different levels of embassies, the very basic level, right up to an embassy level. Embassy level being the highest level. So sometimes you can't jump, but there are ways of doing it. And the point of doing that is to acknowledge that the governments, whether in Europe or in Asia or Southeast Asia, acknowledge that there is there's a government in Myanmar that we want to work with. That's number one. Number two, I think, quite importantly, the role of the Rohingyas. I think it was also decided as part of the consultation, and we consulted at least close to about 200 people from a variety of background, inside Myanmar, outside Myanmar, diplomats, academics, consultants, security specialists, the whole range. And I think they basically said that one of the things that was recommended was that NUG, NUCC, together with the other ethnic states, must accept the Rohingyas as citizens of the country. They cannot be treated as adopted children and terrorized every time you want to create a problem, you go and terrorize them. That really has to stop. So therefore, there was an important need help, Myanmar. So one was NUG, accept NUG, NUCC, ethnic groups as part of the new structure that's emerging. Number two, accept the groups in Myanmar itself, accept the Rohingyas as part of the equation, part of the country, citizens of the country. And we also said that it's time for ASEAN countries to help build capacity. Because if you want to build a government, it can't be done from scratch. You have to have experts. You need to build people with skills. You need people with administration experiences. You need people how to organize local councils, how to do taxation, and a whole variety of stuff, how to build roads, how to do planning and so on. So we recommended that ASEAN governments actually help develop capacity, whether it's technology, whether it is basic stuff that you will need to run the government. So some of these recommendations were along those lines. So now, fast forward, we are now in the 4 years, going into the 5th year, and we see that this thing is just being prolonged, and indirectly it works for the junta. Nothing has happened. Nothing has changed at all. So my view is this. My view is that we start off from, say, Indonesia. We have the 5-point consensus, and there are many criticisms about the 5-point consensus. It is ineffective, it is a failure, it hasn't responded, it's been taken advantage by Min Aung Hlaing and the junta, and he's pointing the finger at everybody else as a result of that. So how do we move this thing? How do we move the needle? How do you get this thing going? So I think we see that, one, the 5-point consensus has to be redefined. So one of the things that has to be redefined is the notion of the special envoy. So the special envoy is nominated by the country that chairs ASEAN. So normally you get a good 8 months, but really 8 months is not enough to solve this problem. You need one person appointed as a special envoy, and that person should be based at the ASEAN Secretariat. He can be an ambassador, he can be whatever the rank can be, but you need one person who can coordinate this through the many years. Not every time you have a new chairman, the new chairman appoints a person, and then he has to start all over again. So there is no collective memory that you pick up from the last 3 years or 4 years. You start everything new. In fact, the decision that was made in Indonesia as part of its closing months was that to have this arrangement that the previous chair, the present chair, and the future chair have an arrangement. They all will work together as they go along.
Right.
But somehow in Laos it did not work. I didn't see it working, and I don't see it happening in Malaysia as well. So I guess maybe they don't see the need for that, or maybe there's no effectiveness. But I would have thought that's really helpful because it keeps the continuity. It keeps the continuity, and you have a long view. I think that long view is missing. So the special envoy cannot be just for 8 months. It has to be for 3 years, 5 years for him or her to finish the responsibility of developing and reporting and saying, hey, look, we have done all of the A, B, C, and D in bringing back democracy, human rights, and so on. So today, 5 years or 5 years going into the 5th year, we have a humanitarian crisis in front of us, a huge humanitarian crisis, and that humanitarian crisis has been made worse by the cut in US aid for humanitarian work in the border areas of Myanmar and Thailand, Myanmar and India, and Myanmar and China. So now, there's 1 million people along the border, and I understand as a result of the bombing, there are at least about 20,000 people every month who are becoming refugees, more and more refugees. And unfortunately, there isn't any money for providing support, providing aid, providing education, food, and so on and so forth. So this is where I think we have failed as such. So my suggestion would be that ASEAN sets up an ASEAN humanitarian fund, where ASEAN countries, the 10 countries, contribute some money and then try to get help from countries like Japan, Korea, the Europeans, and so on and so forth. Now I understand the Europeans are also are more careful with how they spend their foreign aid, overseas aid, because now they want to spend more money for arms and so on and so forth. So I think basically it'll be a challenge, but it can be done. There's some very rich countries in Southeast Asia. There's some rich countries in Asia itself. So therefore, I think we can take advantage of that. And this is important because you cannot control the spread of diseases. Yeah. Malaria, for example, cholera, for example, and other communicable diseases, AIDS and so on and so forth, is spreading now into Thailand. And I think Thailand is very aware of that, and Thailand wants something done about it. And when these things start, it begins to have a problem in other parts of Southeast Asia, like Malaysia, Cambodia, because they're all neighboring states. And the movement is very high in all of these states, though. So therefore, I think in that sense, something has to be done very quickly. And not only humanitarian aid, but also you need to, and as a result of this chaos, you have springing up, of scam centers. All these scam centers are coming up, and they're supported by local armies, by the governments, and this is becoming another source of problem because people do not have jobs, are now rushing to go into jobs and finding themselves being trafficked and living in slavery. So this causes other problems. But the point I want to raise is because of the chaos that is happening and without a resolution, it is now posing a security threat to ASEAN, especially to Thailand, to Malaysia, to Cambodia, and Laos, and so on. So this is something that we really have to keep in mind. Now, coming back to Indonesia, though, I think we need to be solution focused. And what I mean by solution focused is let's see where Thailand, where Indonesia left off. They did 164 different dialogue sessions. They met everybody, and finally they said, they are so far apart that you can't even take one string to tie them up together. That's how far apart they are. Understandable, 70 years of fighting with each other. So that's very understandable. So I don't know why Malaysia is now doing the same consultation. There's no reason, nothing new is going to come out of it. I think what Malaysia should do is simply this, or what ASEAN should be doing is simply this. Learn from Indonesia and say, yes, we take note of what Indonesia has done, and we also recognize that the situation has got worse. Humanitarian effort has also got worse. The bombings of innocent people have also got worse. So therefore, we need to move into a peace approach. And the peace approach will have one or two things that are sequenced in phase 1 and phase 2. The phase 1 would be a release of political prisoners to show confidence that I can work with you, ASEAN can work with you. So release political prisoners, that's number 1, and then followed by a ceasefire. So 6 months. You lay your guns. You keep your guns. At this time, nobody will trust you to hand over, but keep your guns and start building your own states, right? And then, if you don't do any of that, no release of political prisoners, no ceasefire, then you downgrade Myanmar from where it is right now to a lower level. Which means that right now, the heads of government, the Prime Minister or the leader of Myanmar cannot participate in ASEAN meetings. Even the minister cannot. Although, sometimes they cheat and they bring the minister, but technically they cannot. So what you do now is, if you don't do a ceasefire in 6 months, you cannot participate in any of ASEAN's activities. You're not letting them go. You're still part of ASEAN, but till you do this, we will not allow you to come and join us. I think this is something that has to be explored. And it's consistent with the ASEAN Charter, which calls for human rights, democracy, rule of law, and good governance. You have clearly violated all of that, and you have clearly violated and never followed through with any of the one of the 4 or 5 point consensus. Nothing has happened. So I think it's only fair now for ASEAN to say, look, your problem has become a regional problem. And we take note of that. And if we don't do something about it, this is going to come and hurt us in a very personal way. So therefore, this is our response to you. I mean, the issue of scams, for example, scam centers, Malaysian citizens are working there. Thai citizens are working there. Indonesians are also working there. So therefore, there are many people who are actually working there, looking for jobs, but they're all being trafficked. Okay. And that's not only thing. In the case of Thailand, you'll have a problem with diseases, and diseases can spread. And with all this chaos that's happening there, you'll have a proliferation of the movement of arms, for example, arms, drugs, and so on and so forth. So you're going to create a problem that is quite unnecessary. And I think ASEAN doesn't need to deal with that because it's got its own set of problems. So therefore, I think now it is time to bell the cat. It's time to bell the cat. You're given 4 years, nothing is moving. So on the 5th year, you actually make a point and you say, look, 1, release the political prisoners. We can face it out. We can discuss, face it out. Number 2, what you do is 6 months, 7 months, whatever, ceasefire must happen. You don't, we're going to downgrade you even further. And I think that's the way to pursue. And there will be problems. You'll have problems from China, you'll have problems from India, and you'll have problems from others as well, Russia and so on and so forth. But I think ASEAN needs to be strong. And otherwise, ASEAN is going to look stupid though. I mean, ASEAN, this is a break for ASEAN, make or break. And it looks like it's more towards break than actually a make. So I think this is something that has to be thought through carefully.
I'm Tisana Choonhavan. I'm a Member of Parliament, District 2, Bangkok. Well, I'm concentrating on human rights issues, for example, Southern Thailand insurgency, Myanmar crisis, and about economic. The economic. Mainly in my district, we have problems with the gap between the rich and the poor, and the communities that are the slum communities, basically. And mostly there's problems with evictions, because the communities usually live in a state-owned property, and they confiscate the lands. So they have to evict a lot of people. There's more than 500 houses that has been evicted in my area, yes, and it's all state-owned properties.
I see. And which is your area that you represent?
Pathumwan, Sathorn, Ratchathewi. It's a very central Bangkok. Yeah.
Right. So this is downtown Bangkok.
Downtown, yes, correct.
Right. Now, you say that one of the areas that you're also concentrated on, Thai-Myanmar relations and the Myanmar crisis. Can you share a bit more about that?
Well, about the Myanmar crisis, I joined the APHR as a member of parliament, and I went to Mae Sot several times. And I'm also a commissioner at the Foundation of Education and Development that works for education for the refugees in Mae Sot, Mae Sariang, and in Ranong. We have 3 branches as a school for refugees' children, yes.
So you say you visited Mae Sot recently. Can you talk a bit about what you saw, who you talked to, and was there anything there that you witnessed that surprised you?
Well, mostly the informations about the ex-political activists or ex-politicians from NLD political party, is classified because there can be dangers to the ex political activists in Thailand as well. So basically, I went to visit them, and they told me about the issues that they encounter with the Thai authority. Mostly is corruptions, briberies, and threats. Threats to their lives, to their security, to their sometimes even sexual assaults to the young women and their children as well. In order to gain briberies or to gain money out of these refugees, because the problem is they cannot have a passport or an identification, because in order to do that you need to go to a Myanmar embassy, and they would be automatically sent back because they are blacklisted. They are ex-politicians, they are ex-human rights lawyers, they are activists, political activists. So their names is on the blacklisted people. So if they ask for the visa or if they ask for a work permit, they would be sent back right away. So right now they're just depending on each other and depending on their savings that they had back in their countries. And mostly they're skilled workers, they have skills in engineer, some are doctors, and some are, white collar jobs, had a white collar jobs back in Myanmar. But right now they cannot do anything because of the restriction that I told you earlier, and the fear of persecution if they are to go to the embassy.
Right, and it's well documented in Mae Sot how the refugees, the migrants there, the exploitative system in terms of the Thai authorities that they're faced. We were talking before this interview offline about some of the things that you and your party are trying to do to make it less exploitative and to try to correct this system really from the roots, not just replacing one bad apple that's going to be replaced, but then another one's going to take its turn. I wonder if you can talk to our listeners about how you and your party have been trying to address this at the root level so that it could be less exploitative in the Mae Sot area.
Yeah, well, we try to reform the police, which is led by Rangsiman, who is the chairman of the Border and Security Committee. He tried to propose a law that in order to get a promotion, you need to have like a KPI for the police officers, that if you have done a lot of missions, if you have accomplishments, then you get the promotion, and not by, paying, people who are higher than you, or to, please someone, or to arrest some political activists. It is, they use that as a way to skip having to work hard. That is not right. Yeah. So we're trying to stop it, but we won the election last time, but we didn't become the government. That's why we can't push forwards all the legislations and laws that we we try to propose. Yeah.
But I really appreciate, and I think our listeners appreciate hearing that there are these Thai members of parliament that are trying to help a terribly exploitative situation, because so often in the news and what people hear anecdotally through their friends, what happens to them, or incidents that we hear about are really how they're being cracked down or exploited by Thai police or returned back to the SAC, where then they're conscripted right away. And so I think it is really inspiring to know there are people like yourself and other members of parliament here that are identifying the problems within your own system and country and trying to do something to try to change that.
Yeah, well, that's we're still trying, but right now the most important thing is to assist them in humanitarian needs, for the goods and services that are needed, like foods and medicines and shelter, not to be pushed back to persecution, and to respect the non-refoulement principle as a customary international law. So that's what the ASEAN members need to uphold right now. Yes.
So what kind of humanitarian assistance would you like to see taking place in the Thai-Burmese border?
I think we are not doing our best, to be honest. If we're doing our best, we should grant a work permit for the refugees that can't be returned to their hometown. For example, the pink card, so they can work to sustain themselves and to feed their family, so they don't have to rely on the budgets of an NGO or international organizations that is now decreasing because of Trump's budgets cut as well. So if they can do that, it would be perfect, because they want to work, they don't want to be illegal. Nobody wants to be illegal, So, but the Thai government what they're doing is they set up regulations that there needs to be an employer request in order to register the migrants to be in the system, which does not work in the long run, because we have an influx of refugees fleeing from warfare from Myanmar, as we know. Yeah.
So what you said is addressing especially the working migrants with pink cards, getting work permits, being able to be here legally. As you said, of course, everyone wants to be legal. And we've spoken to other guests on this podcast who've said it's also very much in the interest, in the security interest of the Thai state to know who is in the country and be able to have a database of knowing the backgrounds of those people that are here. That's one part of it, is the working migrants. The other part is refugees, and that are fleeing violence of all different ages and backgrounds. Thailand, of course, doesn't recognize refugees as a term, but looking at the humanitarian crisis and the refugee population that's coming in, even if we might not use that word, what are your thoughts on how they might be accommodated or supported?
I think, first of all, like you said, there's no such terms as refugees in the immigration bill. The migration bills or whatever. So basically, there needs to be an amendment, and there has to be an exemption from crimes if they're trying to get into the country because they're fleeing from war, or if they meet the elements of refugees, like in the 1951 convention relating to the status of refugees, which is they could face persecution in their mother country if they're being forcibly sent back. So basically, Thailand has to recognize refugees because our border is next to Myanmar, which has civil unrest ongoing. And Thai government has to stop denying that there's no war in Myanmar or there's no refugees exist, when we have around 90,000 in the borders for more than 50 years now. We lock them down in that area, and we have not signed the convention relating to the status of refugees, which create obstacles for the UNHCR to register the refugees in Thailand within the borders. And even the Uyghur themselves, they don't have the authorization, that were just sent back. The 47 of them were not granted a refugee status when they are refugees, But it's because of a reluctance of our government to sign the convention that would benefit greatly for resettlement in a third country, which we had Germany, the United States, and many developed countries that asked for Uyghur, for the 47 of them to be transported to their countries, but the government refused and sent them to back to China, which created a huge destructive, response from the EU and the US, which means they blacklisted our prime minister and everyone involved with the illegal deportation, and the EU is canceling our free trade agreement. Yeah.
Now, you said that you call on the government of Thailand to recognize refugees, which other people have done as well, and being able to support them simply by recognizing their existence. The other thing that you just mentioned was that you also want to see the Thai government recognize that there's a war. And I want to underscore that because we've also spoken to other guests on here, especially other Thai guests, who have shared about some of the difficulties that the Burmese migrants, refugees, whatever name you want to put in them, the huge influx that's coming into Thai society, the challenges that understandably that would bring about, but that there needs to be a people-to-people education about what they're going through and what they're escaping from, and being able to provide some kind of safe haven and support, knowing that these people don't want to be there any more than those communities might want to see them, but that this is the reality of the situation. So when you say that Thailand needs to recognize that there's a war, is there, do you feel that there's not a proper understanding of the nature of the conflict that's taking place, that it's been minimized or misrepresented, and that because of that, there's also not a proper understanding of why these people are coming in, and that's leading to some of these tensions?
No, I think the people know there's a war going on. I think it's just selfish reasons. Some of the people think that the migrant workers are stealing their jobs. Some of the people are just different ideology. They just don't like foreigners in general. Yeah, and they don't care if there's a war going on. Just like a lot of people, I think, maybe I don't know, in a lot of countries around the world who receive a lot of refugees and has issues with the local people. So it's nothing strange, I think. Yeah, like Trump's administration himself is promoting the idea of deportation, and he's always been anti, migrant workers anyways. So that's this idea is being perpetrated all over the world, not just within the US. So I think that's how the conservatives are winning the election as well. I think that's a big thing for them to promote.
Yeah. Now, the last question I have is that you mentioned that you're part of APHR, Asian Parliamentarians for Human Rights. Can you share why it was important for you to be aligned with this mission and what you're doing through your association?
I think that is very important to raise an awareness, even though people might not, sympathize might not have sympathy for them. But for example, if I meet with a very, right winger or something like that, or conservative, I would say that if they are illegal migrants and if they don't have the work permit, as in they're living illegally in Thailand and they committed crimes, how can you catch them? How can you know which one, you don't have any identification. You don't know their face, no fingerprints, no nothing. So that's even more dangerous for the Thai people, isn't it? And they're coming anyway because our border is next to each other. They don't have a private jet to fly to England, So they have to cross the border to Thailand first before going to a third country if they want to. So basically, it's better to register them than not register them for the right-wing benefit as well, for the people that hate migrants. They want them to be persecuted if they committed crimes, obviously, right? So I said that having identification is still better than not having identification. Yes, and especially when Thailand is going through an aging population, we're gonna need a lot more young people, because right now we have one young person against 4 elders, So basically, that's the proportion of the proportionately. We have 1 against 4 elders in Thailand. So basically, it's going through an aging population and having a lot of young people from Myanmar, especially that are fleeing from conscription. It's going to help with the economy as they could become workers and work for our economy as well. I think that is very important, and they do the jobs that most Thais don't want to do, like they work in the seafood industry. Even during COVID-19, they just work throughout like the pandemic, and they're hard workers. And I think that our country would benefit more than losing benefits from having them. Yes.
It sounds like really common sense, from economy to security to the aging population. One would hope that that common sense would ring through and that would form into policy.
Mostly the problems that Thai people have with the Myanmar people are the same groups of people that live in the same community. Because they don't mix with the Thai people. So basically, this is I'm also a member of parliament as a district member of parliament, which means I have constituencies, right? And within my constituencies and in the communities that are my district, have also a Myanmar population within, and a lot of young people as well. So they always have issues with the Thai teenagers because they don't speak the same language and they don't mix. Like they just stick with their groups of different ethnicities. So that's like how the resentment is coming from having a small groups of aliens, and now there's larger groups of Burmese people in Thai communities, especially in slums. So basically, they are having issues with the people with the same background, basically.
So do you think there's something more that could be done to bring those groups together?
Well, what we can do is we just say that they're all people. They just have to embrace it. But like I think that what they're thinking is that they're stealing the jobs of the Thai blue collar workers, which is partially true, and partially not true, because they cannot work at the job that you need linguistic skills anyways. When you have to speak Thai, Thai people are going to get that job. So it's not really, like they can work in a job in a factory that you don't have to speak, just like working like a machine, that those Burmese people are working in those areas. So it's like, it's hard, it's difficult to say, I would rather not get involved in conflicts. But if there's crimes, I would report both groups. If Thai people committed crimes or Burmese, there's good and bad in everybody. There's no stereotypical, it's always a bad thing, Like there's generalization, it's always bad. It's not, not like there's good and bad in every ethnicities, every nationalities, right? Yeah. Well, I think that the ASEAN countries and also the key players in Southeast Asia, like China and India, including the US, like the major superpowers, they have to, international communities, they have to come together for, restoration of democracy in Myanmar. And first, they have to have a peace agreement, but it's very, very difficult because the fragmented groups in ethnicities in Myanmar, it's hard to come together and even have a direction, unified direction in Myanmar is difficult at this time. So that is what the world has to aim for, is the peace and security in Myanmar and restoration of democracy. Yeah.
Well, I'm Aung Paw Moe, and back in 2021, I was arrested in a crackdown of a protest, and I was in prison for 1 year and 10 months, and then I fled to the border, fled to Mae Sot, and settled in Thailand. So my background I think I would describe myself as an exile activist.
Thank you for coming on and talking and sharing your story. I wonder if before your arrest, you had ever had any experience in a prison before, as well as I want to ask you, I hope this is not triggering. If this is traumatic to discuss, we don't have to. But if you're able to discuss your time in prison and the experience of being in prison for our listeners.
Well, it's not that traumatic, to discuss. But the problem is I don't have a very good memory. And in prison, it's like things happens quite slowly, and it's nothing out of the box. What happens every day is nothing out of the box. It's the same routine every day after day. So I think if I have to point out some positive things that that I get from my experience in prison is that self-discipline. Of course, self-discipline is quite important, and without self-discipline, you cannot survive. Survive this very boring routine day after day. So you have to structure your day like read in the morning, exercise in the evening, and so on. And so on, repeat.
So you were a student before 2021. When the coup happened, you became a protester. And then when you were arrested, you, after nearly 2 years in prison, you're now an exile living in a different country, not knowing when you can go back home. When you think about yourself, who you are today, and you remember who you were, let's say on January 31st, 2021, how have you changed? How have you grown? How are you different?
I think how can I say that? Many things have changed, but if I had to point out one, it will be all this experience. But I don't think all these experience as negative, negative, particularly negative, because it's what I set out to do for myself. For myself, it's the path that I've chosen for myself. So I think I have to bear with the consequences, the prison, imprisonment, the exile life, and so on.
What path did you choose for yourself?
Standing up for freedom, maybe.
Yeah. Was that a hard decision to make?
Well, it's not a hard decision to make. It's not that hard, because I think everyone is capable of deciding. So we have our own basic humanity. I believe everyone has their own basic humanity, and everyone can decide with a clear conscience what is right and what is wrong. And I think the uprising, particularly in 2021, showed that people are capable of thinking conscientiously, maybe.
Before 2021, were you politically active, or were you aware of the social, political issues that were happening inside your country?
Of course, I was aware. Most especially one of the fightings between Arakan Army and the Myanmar military escalated in around maybe 2019 and the Rohingya issues, and particularly the Myanmar's ICG defender at that time, William Shabak, he visited our school, Yangon University, and we staged a little, protest in front of the convocation hall where he was going to give his speech.
What exactly were you protesting about him?
It was against genocide, and it was to to convey a message that we should not defend Myanmar military on this issue.
Now, when Aung San Suu Kyi went to The Hague to give her speech in defense of the Myanmar military, many Burmese at that time were really joyous and supportive of her. There were literally signs in the street and Facebook posts with the expression, "We stand with Aung San Suu Kyi." So there was, I was in Myanmar at the time, and that was as a foreigner, that was a very sensitive issue to talk about because people felt so strongly and felt so strongly in support of Aung San Suu Kyi and felt so strongly that the wider international community was misunderstanding a key issue that only they had the right information to. And so it sounds like you were not standing with Aung San Suu Kyi.
Yeah, we were not standing with Aung San Suu Kyi because we knew from the very beginning that Myanmar military won't hesitate to kill, rape, or murder. They're killing, raping, or murdering even their own citizens, and the Rohingyas, these are the people that they don't view even as citizens or even as human beings. So I think it can only get worse. It can only get worse. So we don't believe any of the cover-ups stories that both the government and the military issue at that time.
Now, when you're saying we didn't believe, who was this collective we that you're with?
I was with University of Yangon Students Union at that time, and I'm still with them. I'm still helping them in many things.
Did you get into different kinds of arguments with fellow Bamar family members, friends, students, etc., that had different views of this?
No, I've never been confronted because I think I have a tendency to surround myself with like-minded people and reasonable people.
I just think it must have been hard because at that time there was such a prevalence among society believing in a certain way, and you're going against that.
And I might add something because and after the coup, there was a rearrangement of ideas, some rethinking by the public about the Rohingya issue in particular, and their sentiment seems to have changed at that time, but I think it's now reverting back. It's reverting, maybe revert a little bit back. Because they still feel strongly connected, strongly supportive of Aung San Suu Kyi, and they sympathize with her. They do much sympathize with her. And for me, I also sympathize with her because it's almost like maybe one third of her life was in prison, or was under house arrest, and so on. So I personally, I don't think the recent arrest warrant by the Argentine court should not maybe include Aung San Suu Kyi, maybe delayed a little bit because she was under detention. But that does not mean she was, not responsible for the crime against Rohingya at that time. she was clearly supportive, and she helped the military cover up. She and her ministry issue a lot of fake news, covered news, and so on.
Right. Now, going back to 2021 and your activism, which led to your arrest, do you remember how you were feeling when you were detained and when you got led into prison?
I thought that time, when I was arrested, I thought that it's over. It's over for me. I thought we will only be released, after the military failed, after we've won, but after a year or so, I began to think that it's not going to be like that. It's not going to be like that. It's not going to be like that, and it became clear to me that I will be released. I will be released before this whole situation gets resolved.
And what was when you first got arrested, you're going into an alien environment, having no idea what awaits you, how long you're going to be there. I wonder if you remember just how it felt walking into that atmosphere.
Let me maybe recollect a little bit. But actually, it took me by surprise that I was not very uncomfortable with the prison environment, because even when I'm outside, I'm outside. I don't usually get to socialize a lot of people. I don't usually go out. I just isolate myself in the room. So it took me by surprise that it wasn't that much, uncomfortable for me. But one thing that is very uncomfortable was that throughout my prison time, I got to move a lot. I got to move a lot. They are constantly changing me place to place. I got to pack my things, which are usually maybe four bags. So, and they don't help the prisoner with their bags. So I got to get everything, my every possessions, and I got to move to really far places.
Right. How were your relations with the fellow prisoners?
I don't get to know many people, many strangers. I just talk. I just socialize with people who I already know. I was not alone in the prison, but I had some friends along with me, that get caught along with me.
So you were with your friends for the duration of your sentence?
Yeah, it's like that. But as I've said, they change me from place to place. So it's changing. People are changing.
How about with the guards?
The guards, I rarely spoke to them.
So there wasn't abuse that you experienced or witnessed?
Abuse by the prisoner, no. But I had to still go to the interrogation unit before I get to the prison. I have to go to the interrogation. It was uncomfortable to say the least, But at that time they didn't use any tools or any method of torture. They just beat me up in the head, and then they sent us to prison. So getting into prison was sort of like a relief,
I see. I see. I just want to repeat what you said. You said they just beat me in the head. That doesn't sound like a small thing.
Yes, that doesn't sound like sound like a small thing, but at least they're not using any tools. They just punch me in the head, you know.
Well, that's terrible, though.
That's terrible. But now it's a lot
Sure.
lot more worse.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Um, and uh, and so, having now been out of prison, do you feel that your time in prison changed or impacted you in any way?
Of course, it has impacted me in mostly. I only take, you know, I'm an optimist. You know, I only take the positive side. So the positive impact out of it was, first I became more self-disciplined. I got to read a lot there. Now, after the release, it's just so many things happening, so many confusion. It's harder to focus.
I see. Did you have problems focusing before prison?
I won't say I have problems.
Right. You said you read a lot of books in prison. What books stand out that made an impact?
Well, books that I read were not quite, you know, political or fictions. They were just very technical stuff, like, you know, it was mainly mathematical tasks.
Do you come from a mathematical background?
Yeah. I was in fact I would say that I was more, you know, interested in mathematics than in political activism.
I see.
It's like it's one of my first priority.
I think this is important to mention because this is also so many students like you, either in Myanmar or outside, you have this natural vocation and talent that you could be going into, like mathematics. And because of the political situation of your country, well, you know, it's fine in a free country for someone to want to do political activism. There's always a need for it. And if someone has that passion, it's wonderful to pursue it. But it's not so great when one feels that one has to. You know, that it's not your first choice, but it's the most important thing for your country, and that, you know, when a society has so many really critical problems, one just thinks, how could I possibly do this or that when it's happening inside this greater system? So it's a loss. I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at. It's a loss for the country and the education that you feel you have to. And I've spoken to so many people, I've spoken to monks, you know, just they wish they could study the Buddhist teachings. They wish they could meditate all day, but they feel they cannot because they have to engage politically or socially in the deeper problems going on.
Yeah, I try to focus on both things, you know, both things. Because, you know, it's just like I said before, you know, we cannot stand by and just watch, you know, we cannot stand by and just watch. Everybody know we got to act, like in 2021. Everybody knew that we got to add something, and everybody really did add on something. Whether it's successful or not, we still can, you know, fathom.
So you say you're an optimistic person, and here we are over 4 years after the coup, nearly 2 years in prison, and the conflict is still dragged on, and any number of analysts will give you any number of opinions about where we're at. But speaking as an optimist, what's your thought in where we are today in the Myanmar conflict?
I can't say for sure, I can't say for sure when will this get resolved or when we will win. But one thing I can say for sure is it's a necessary experience for our whole society. We need this experience, and we cannot bypass this. We cannot bypass this experience, and cannot bypass this and do something else. This is something necessary and something meaningful. Even if it goes on for a long time, we'll just have to enjoy it, I think.
Enjoy it.
And endure.
Endure. I'm sorry. I thought you said enjoy. Right.
I'm not that much, statistics.
Yeah.
To enjoy the suffering. Oh no. Of course, we're not enjoying the suffering, but I think we'll have to endure it.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this show. I know that it can be easy to feel overwhelmed and powerless in the face of the horrors that continue to unfold in Myanmar. But even just the mere act of staying informed, it's a powerful way to bear witness and keep focus on the issue. And this work is only made possible because of the generosity of donors and listeners like you. So if this episode has been valuable to you in any way, and you'd like to help us to continue to keep sharing these vital stories, please consider making a donation. Whether it's a one-time contribution or a monthly pledge, your help will translate into more episodes like the one you just heard. You can join our mission today by visiting insightmyanmar.org/donation or send us a message to learn more about the various options.
Oba yarananda dayananga yaranaya dayanam boda yaranam no